Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown. Before we go on with our worship service, I have just a few announcements to share. Speaking of our gratitude service, we are once again creating a gratitude labyrinth on our front lawn next Sunday. You are welcome to walk it as a wonderfully grounding spiritual experience. And we ask that you bring a canned good or several canned goods to leave along the path of the labyrinth. That the cans will then be donated to our little free pantry. We hope to line the entire labyrinth with our donations as we think about the abundance of our lives. Also next Sunday, November 19th, I will be participating in an interfaith Thanksgiving service over at the Methodist Church on Shank Painter. This service is at 2 p.m., and you are all invited. It's a double worship day. I think it's a wonderful idea to gather with the other churches in town from time to time. The other ministers and I have been plotting, and we have some ideas formulating about other joint ventures, like a Singspiration event with Pastor Brown's Jamaican congregation. But this is the first thing that we are doing together, and it's hosted by the Nauset Interfaith Association, which includes different churches of different denominations all the way up to Brewster, and also the Am Hayam Cape Cod Havara. So please join us for worship at the Methodist Church at 2 p.m. next week, and I'll be offering the call to worship and the prayer. Saturday, November 18th, there is an artist reception over at the Commons, and our own Wave will be exhibiting his ceramic wall pockets called Sea Pods. That's from 3 to 6 p.m. I hope you can stop by. And that same evening, Saturday the 18th, Isabel is hosting a song circle. It's a potluck at 6:30 and singing at 7:30. So wave your hand. You can see Isabel for the location and any questions you have. Members, if you haven't yet filled out your pledge sheet for 2024, we have those available at coffee hour today or online at uumh.org. About 1/3 of our budget is covered each year by the generous donations of our members and friends. Thank you so much to those of you who have already done this. We are very grateful. Our new member class is happening tomorrow night. It's from 5 to 7 o'clock on Zoom, and there is still time to sign up if you want to see me after the service, or you can email me, revkate@uumh.org, and I can send you that link. The class is a chance to learn a little bit more about Unitarian Universalist history, the history of this congregation, and how we organize ourselves now. This is such a wonderful community, and we would love to welcome you more fully into the life of this congregation. Next week, during our morning service, we're going to be having a little welcome ceremony for those who have taken the class. So we hope you can be here for that to welcome our new members. And finally, if you are here in person today, we hope that you can stick around for a little while after the service ends for coffee and conversation downstairs in Acker Bosworth Hall. Now let's take a moment to affirm our community's covenant. You can find this on the little purple laminated cards in your pews, or you can just listen line by line as I say it. I invite you to repeat each line after me. Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
This is our great covenant.
This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace. To seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now, as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you who are watching from home to light a candle wherever you are. In that way, we can feel connected even while we are apart. And this morning, I invite Ellen and Pastor Brenda Haywood to light our chalice for us.
Our chalice lighting this morning is by Pat Uribe Lichty. We come together with our tired minds and bodies, with our confusion and questions, our uncertainties and our fears. We come together with our hopes, with our pasts and our ideas, our passions, and our faith. We come together bringing all of who we are, trusting that in gathering we will be renewed, and that together we can create the world we long for.
Thank you. At this time, I invite you to join me in singing our opening hymn. It's number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. That's hymn number 163 in this gray hymnal, For the Earth Forever Turning. Please rise as you are able. You may be seated. Please join us now in a time of meditation and prayer. During this time, or at any time during the service, you are welcome to light a silent candle at the table to the right of the pulpit, where there is a journal to record your thoughts and prayers. After our prayer, we will sing together Spirit of Life, hymn number 123, which is also printed on those purple laminated cards in your pews. We'll sing first in English and then in Spanish. Our prayer this morning is by Leif Seligman. It's called Each Breath. We pause in the stillness to rest for a moment, to quiet ourselves so that we can feel what stirs within us. Each breath draws us closer to the pulse of life, and with each exhalation, we make room for something new. May we find in this gathering the comfort of those who care. May we encounter patience along our growing edges and compassion in our most tender spots. Here, may we find the inspiration and encouragement we need to face our challenges and nurture ourselves. And in the presence of suffering across the globe, may we redouble our efforts to practice kindness where we are, with the hope that the light of our actions travels like the light of faraway stars. May our gestures of compassion and generosity seed possibility. May we travel humbly with one another, choosing reconciliation over resentment as we try to live right-sized. When life presses in and shifts us off balance, when pain assails us, when frustration mounts, may the rhythm of our breath steady us and bring us back to a place of gratitude. And let us end this time of prayer and meditation by breathing together. I invite you to take some long, slow breaths with me, and I will count to 5 on the inhale and to 6 on the exhale. If you can, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. As you inhale, fill your whole belly and rib cage, and remember to take that full 6 count on the exhale. You can close your eyes if you want to. Here we go. Breathing in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one more silently. Amen.
The reading this morning is For My Friends Who Are Wounded by Barbara Rhoda. If I could, I would go to them and say, it was only a dream. I would sit beside them and hold them in their dark and let their tears fall on the soft sleeves of my gown. I would kiss their hair. I would talk softly to them. I would tell them the secrets of fireflies and stars and the frost lace on the windows and the harvesting corn. I would sing the grandfather's songs. I would bring small gifts in my hand, white spiraled shells and crimson leaves, smooth stones, a hyacinth, a peach. Then we would stand by the window, our arms around each other's waists. We would breathe in the cold night air. We would make promises and wait, silently, still, listening for the brave, bright, astonishing light. Please join me in singing the next hymn, 101, Abide With Me. That's 101 in the gray hymnal, Abide With Me. Please rise as you're able.
Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing support of this Meetinghouse and our shared ministry. As we enjoy a musical reflection by our choir, we welcome your donations here in the sanctuary or online through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, uumh.org. And there are QR codes in the pews as well. Our office administrator, Kenneth, is out sick today, so Lorraine, would you be willing to collect the money? Thank you so much. I invite 3 volunteer ushers forward to collect the collection this morning. On and off site, your offerings will be gratefully received. Thank you. Yesterday was Veterans Day, a day set aside for honoring all who have served and those who are still serving in our armed forces. Months ago, I chose the topic of Veterans Day to preach about today, and although I haven't changed course entirely, I don't feel like I can preach a sermon about war veterans in this country without acknowledging what is happening in the world today. Today, I use the metaphor of the things we carry. And so I just acknowledge up front that we carry multiple things on our hearts at the same time. One care does not stop so that we can care about another thing. I also want to acknowledge that we carry things differently based on our history, our backgrounds, and our experiences. So you will receive today's words differently than the person sitting next to you. I think about the member of this congregation who is deployed right now as I talk about the moral injury of being a soldier. And I think of the Jewish members of this congregation as I speak about Israel and Gaza. And I think of the people of color in this congregation who will hear a story about the shooting of a black child later in this sermon that will land in your hearts like a punch. I carry a care for all of you in my heart, and I did so as I wrote these words. I've been thinking about war more than I usually do of late. I guess it's on all of our minds. It's on all the news channels. Violence continues in Myanmar and Syria. 35 regions of Africa are in armed conflict. War lingers on in Ukraine. The death tolls climb in Gaza. And we worry that war will spread in the Middle East, that more countries will become involved, that the United States will be pulled in even more than we already are. War is a difficult thing to stop once it has begun. And while we have days set aside for thinking about those who served in war in official capacities in the military, we can't help but also think about those civilians whose lives have been destroyed by war also, though they did not sign up. The elders and the children, the doctors and the shopkeepers and the school teachers, the families of veterans. There's no holiday for them. The cost of war is incalculable. Many of us are against all war. We protested Vietnam, protested the war in Iraq. Our arguments get hazier when we think about World War II. How could we not get involved with such atrocities happening in Europe? And yet, where do you draw the line? Atrocities are happening all over the globe. What is our duty? Do we empathize more only when the victims look like us? When is it our role to intervene? Is there a different way to do so? My grandfather was part of a troop that liberated the Buchenwald concentration camp in Germany. Buchenwald, by the way, means beech forest. I'm glad he was there, and I'm sure it changed him. He didn't talk about it, ever. We only knew because he had a stash of photos that my dad and uncle saw once. My uncle went on to serve in Vietnam. he didn't talk about it either. I don't pretend to understand the complexities of war. In seminary, I went to a panel that debated the ideas of the just war theory and the complete pacifism preached by people like Daniel Berrigan. I left confused. All I know is that I want people to stop dying. I want my friend Becky, a missionary in Moldova with 3 children, to feel safe, not fearing that a missile launched at Odessa's grain stores might cross the border instead. And I want a ceasefire in Gaza. On October 17th, the Unitarian Universalist Association put out this statement. The UUA joins the chorus of voices urging an immediate and total ceasefire, the admittance of humanitarian aid, and the restoration of power and water to Gaza to prevent the further staggering loss of human life that is inevitable under the current conditions. The statement also said, the UUA condemns the horrific terror attacks from Hamas on Israeli civilians and the taking of innocent hostages. There can never be justification for such an attack. We can hold both of these things at the same time. They are part of the same statement. The statement also says, we call on Unitarian Universalists to continue to witness against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and to side with love in this moment by urging their elected officials to leverage the considerable power of the U.S. government to push for an immediate and humane resolution to the crisis in Gaza, including total ceasefire, humanitarian aid access, and rescinding the evacuation order. I'm not sure who reads or hears statements from religious leaders, but I thought you should know that we have said this to the world. Regardless of how we feel about war or particular wars, what I wanted us to think about this morning is how we care for those who have been through war, and that we can do a better job at it. Holding in one hand our heartbreak at the impact of war on civilians, we hold in this hand our duty to care better for our veterans. This does not mean that we should be blind to the tragic loss of civilian lives. This does not mean that we docilely accept our leaders' reasoning for war. This does not mean that we should silence debate about acceptable tools of war or about who is recruited and why and how. It means that we must hold both our ambivalence about war and our love for veterans together in our same hearts. At the very least, we can hold both these things because we are asking our soldiers and veterans to carry so much more. In college, I remember reading The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. It's a collection of semi-autobiographical, interrelated short stories inspired by O'Brien's wartime experiences in Vietnam. The first chapter opens with these lines. First Lieutenant Jimmy Cross carried letters from a girl named Martha, a junior at Mount Sebastian College in New Jersey. They were not love letters, but Lieutenant Cross was hoping. So he kept them folded in plastic at the bottom of his rucksack. In the late afternoon, after a day's march, he would dig his foxhole, wash his hands under a canteen, unwrap the letters, hold them with the tips of his fingers, and spend the last hour of light pretending. They were signed Love, Martha, but Lieutenant Cross understood that love was only a way of signing and did not mean what he sometimes pretended it meant. At dusk, he would carefully return the letters to his rucksack. Slowly, a bit distracted, he would get up and move among his men, checking the perimeter. Then, at full dark, he would return to his hole and watch the night. When I think about Jimmy Cross carrying those letters from a girl named Martha, I think that he was carrying hope. Hope that maybe Martha's closing of Love, Martha was more than just a way to end a letter. Hope that one day his life would return to the everyday cares of girls and relationships and first kisses. Jimmy let these small hopes stand in for the larger hope, which was heavier to carry. Hope that he would survive the war and get home alive. And hope is not the only thing we ask our soldiers to carry. O'Brien writes, "The things they carried were largely determined by necessity. Among the necessities or near necessities were P38 can openers, pocket knives, heat tabs, wristwatches, dog tags, mosquito repellent, chewing gum, candy, cigarettes, salt tablets, packets of Kool-Aid, lighters, matches, sewing kits, military payment certificates, sea rations, and 2 or 3 canteens of water. Together, these items weighed between 15 and 20 pounds, depending upon a man's habits or rate of metabolism. Henry Dobbins, who was a big man, carried extra rations. He was especially fond of canned peaches in heavy syrup over pound cake. Dave Jensen, who practiced field hygiene, carried a toothbrush, dental floss, and several hotel-sized bars of soap that he'd stolen on R&R in Sydney, Australia. Ted Lavender, who was scared, carried tranquilizers until he was shot outside the village of Tanki in mid-April. By necessity, and because it was SOP, they all carried steel helmets that weighed 5 pounds, including the liner and camouflage cover. They carried the standard fatigue jackets and trousers. On their feet, they carried jungle boots, 2.1 pounds, and Dave Jensen carried 3 pairs of socks and a can of Dr. Scholl's foot powder as a precaution against trench foot. Until he was shot, Ted Lavender carried 6 or 7 ounces of premium dope, which for him was a necessity. Norman Bowker carried a diary. Rat Kiley carried comic books. Kiowa, a devout Baptist, carried an illustrated New Testament that had been presented to him by his father. I've always been haunted by this idea of the things they carried. Did you know that the number of troops dying in battle is usually eclipsed by the number of suicides among the nation's active duty military personnel? In the 20 years since 9/11, just over 7,000 service members were killed in combat, but over 30,000 have died by suicide. This is shocking news, but it's not actually new. Vietnam veteran advocates have estimated that suicide ultimately killed more of the soldiers who fought in that conflict than the actual war itself. And a study of Vietnam vets 20 years after the conflict found that a quarter of those who served in Vietnam still had post-traumatic stress disorder. I've been listening to the news about the homeless encampments that have been taken down this month in Boston at the Mass and Cass intersection. Many of those living there were veterans. It's estimated that on any given night in Boston, 250 veterans sleep on the street or in shelters. Veterans face a greater risk of homelessness than those who have not served in the military because they carry physical and emotional scars from their time of service, resulting in mental health conditions, substance use disorders, disabilities, and poverty. Now many veterans suffer from traumatic brain injury, from the strength of the weapon blasts, even if they are the ones firing, not being fired upon. And their lungs suffer from exposure to burn pits, and they fight the government for their disability insurance to cover the mysterious side effects of that, which creates resentment that they also carry. We have no idea the weight of the things they carry. In his story, Tim O'Brien skillfully works his way back and forth between the literal burden of physical weight and the invisible things they carry that cannot be weighed on a scale. The typical load of ammunition was 25 rounds, he says, but Ted Lavender, who was scared, carried 34 rounds when he was shot and killed outside Tanqui. And he went down under an exceptional burden, more than 20 pounds of ammunition, plus the flak jacket and helmet and rations and water and toilet paper and tranquilizers and all the rest, plus the unweighed fear. He was dead weight. Forgive me for skipping around the story now. I would love to read the whole thing to you this morning, but since I can't do that, I'll read you these lines found throughout the first chapter. Some carried CS or tear gas grenades. Some carried white phosphorus grenades. They carried all they could bear and then some, including a silent awe for the terrible power of the things they carried. They all carried ghosts. Some things they took turns carrying. They shared the weight of memory. They took up what others could no longer bear. Often they carried each other, the wounded or the weak. They carried all the emotional baggage of men who might die. Grief, terror, love, longing. These were intangibles, but the intangibles had their own mass and specific gravity. They had tangible weight. They carried shameful memories. They carried the common secret of cowardice barely restrained, the instinct to run or freeze and hide. And in many respects, this was the heaviest burden of all, for it could never be put down. It required perfect balance and perfect posture. These are my words now. My friend's younger brother, who served in Iraq, carries this memory. He was on patrol and came around a corner. He saw before him a small figure. In the 2 seconds that he had to make a judgment about how to react, he took in two things. The figure was a child, and the figure had a gun. He should have shot the child, at least that was what his training had taught him. But my friend's brother was a farm boy from the Midwest, not far from his own childhood years on the farm, playing cops and robbers with his cousins. And instead, he took some extra seconds to take in the scene more fully. If this had been a child soldier, my friend's brother would be dead. But it wasn't. It was an Iraqi boy playing with a toy gun that looked very real. And so the soldier's 2-second hesitation saved this boy's life. Using an interpreter, my friend's brother explained to the boy why he must not play with guns, real or pretend. He took the boy's toy gun from him and also found out where he had bought it and went there and explained to the shopkeeper how he was going to get his young customers killed selling toy guns that look like real guns in a war zone. There is so much to this story that is hard to tell and hard to think about. I think of the boy just playing there on his own street and how he could have lost his life for that. I think of the young soldier coming around the corner to find a gun pointed at him and having to decide whether to shoot a child. And I think of the young boy, Tamir Rice, a few years after this story in Iraq, playing with a toy gun in a park in Cleveland, Ohio. And I think about how those police officers did not pause, but simply fired, and how Tamir was killed. And I think of his mother still carrying his picture around. I couldn't tell the one story without telling the other. I carry both on my heart. I am so grateful that my friend's brother paused. And I am devastated that this young man, who I know to be a sweet, caring, joyful young man, carried the responsibility for making these kinds of split-second decisions. That he carries this memory now, along with so many others, and along with his physical battle scars. If I could, I would go to him and say, "It was only a dream." I am only grateful that this story did not go another way, because my friend's brother would have to carry that other story too for the rest of his life. We have no idea the weight of the things they carry. And you know what? We have no idea the weight of the things the person sitting next to us is carrying either. This is something to keep in mind. I was so keenly aware this week as I was writing this sermon about what our veterans carry, that so many of you are carrying so much right now. Some of you might be veterans yourselves. I hope you'll tell me if you are. I know that some of you have children and nieces and nephews in the military, and that you are carrying pride and fear at the same time, and that you are carrying a great hope for your family's safety and for peace. We are all, like I said earlier, carrying the images of war in our minds, the horror stories from October 7th, and the images of the constant missile strikes in Gaza, the craters where apartment blocks used to be. Several of you have lost family members and close friends this season. Our hearts are with you as you carry this grief. I am sure that in the poignancy of these days, you are carrying so many memories of your loved ones, both good and hard ones. I invite you to share those memories with me and with each other. We can hold them together. Many of you are carrying the tremendous weight of caring for family members who are ill. This is not an easy weight to carry, and I know there is some shame in focusing any spotlight on your own burden instead of that of your ill loved one. I invite you to talk about the weight of caregiving. There are more of us sharing this weight than you'd imagine, and we need to talk about it. We need to be gentle with ourselves. And once in a while, we need to put that weight down and care for ourselves. And some of us are the ones carrying the weight of illness ourselves and the disappointment of bodies. How do we tend to our souls when our containers are failing us? Perhaps in part by remembering that we are not our bodies. Perhaps in part by remembering that our bodies do hold us. And so we must take the best care we can with these fragile shells, even if that takes so much more energy than we want to devote to that task. We are each of us carrying burdens of memory, guilt, responsibility, fear. We carry our family histories and failed relationships. We carry our grief for those we loved who are gone from us. We carry our crippling shyness, our diagnoses, our debt, our worry. We carry the heft of that word waiting to be said, goodbye. My hope for us is that these are burdens we can help each other to hold. My hope is that under stress, we can help each other to see our strengths, our inner light. Maybe we can't take away the weight of these very real things that we each carry, but my hope is that we can help each other to find things to carry that sustain, heal, and comfort us as well. Martha, who did not necessarily love Jimmy Cross, but who signed her letters love, once sent Jimmy a beach pebble as a good luck charm. Smooth to the touch, it was a milky white color with flecks of orange and violet, oval-shaped like a miniature egg. On the march through the hot days of early April, he carried the pebble in his mouth, turning it with his tongue, tasting sea salt and moisture. His mind wandered. He had difficulty keeping his attention on the war. On occasion, he would yell at his men to spread out the column, to keep their eyes open, but then he would slip away into daydreams, just pretending, walking barefoot along the Jersey shore with Martha, carrying nothing. He would feel himself rising, sun and waves and gentle winds, all love and lightness. We are each of us carrying magic charms that make us feel safe, objects that help us feel connected to home, touchstones that remind us of better days or better selves, the things that bring us back to center. We carry photos of children and grandchildren, sea glass found on a beach walk, songs in our head that make us smile, jewelry from loved ones, lines of poetry, a soft scarf wrapped around our neck. One of you showed me the prayer square that I made for you years ago that you carried into surgery this week. Do not despair that these small things sometimes feel like the only tether connecting us to peace. These small things hold great power. Do not despair that we need these things, these reminders, to comfort us as a child clings to a blanket. These are the sacred things we carry to counterbalance all those burdens that we also bear. On this Veterans Day weekend, I lift up this truth. Generations of our veterans are in pain. Their families are in pain. We are in pain. And I lift up this truth. Among our burdens, we each carry great value, great strength, great dignity. And we carry small gifts in our hands, white spiraled shells and crimson leaves, smooth stones, a hyacinth, a peach. We can stand by the window, our arms around each other's waists. We can breathe in the cold night air. We can make promises and wait silently, still, listening together for the bright, brave, astonishing light. Amen, and blessed be.
It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the sermon each week. It can be a topic of sharing at coffee hour today or with friends during the week. If you'd like to delve deeper into this question, we invite you to join us at our Zoom coffee hour on Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. If you need that link, you can see me. Our question this week is, what is something that you are carrying this week? What is something that you are carrying this week? Thank you for coming this morning. Is this me? No, this is you. Sorry.
We share a script. Thank you for coming this morning. Thank you for coming this morning online. As we go out into the day and into the week, I don't ask you to put down the things you carry, but I ask you to remember that you are not carrying them alone. Go in peace.